fighting over a bow. Yes, please. Hello, lovely people, and welcome to the Almita Made channel. My name is Alma, and I'm here to chat about all things making, a lot of sewing, a little bit of knitting, and a little bit more knitting today. Because although I said I wouldn't do this every week, and I'm still saying I won't do it every week, but I couldn't help myself but do another little video about episode 2 of The Game of Wool, which is a new Channel 4 TV show about knitting. So if you want to go and take a look at my episode 1 first impressions, you can see that somewhere on the screen, and I'll link it below as well. But episode 2 involved knitting for dogs, and as a huge dog lover and dog mum who has knitted for her dog, I couldn't help myself. I wanted to do a video about that too. So episode 2 was quite different, I thought. I really enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed episode 1, to be honest, but episode 2 ticked more of my boxes. First of all, they were using more interesting looking yarn for me, I thought. It wasn't super chunky knitting like in the first episode. I thought that was going to be it for the rest of the series, but no, we were treated to mohair in this episode, which was fab. There was also something that I really loved, was that there was a little bit more didactic content. Even it was a tiny moment, but they just showed the difference between knitting and crochet. And of course, as makers, we are aware of the difference. We know what that looks like. But if we want anyone else to watch that show that isn't necessarily already a knitter or crocheter or fiber artist, then I think we need a little bit more of that. And I thought that was just a little touch of something that was going, you might not know this, there is a difference. I'm pretty sure most people on the street that do not knit or crochet could not tell you the difference necessarily between knitting and crochet. So I really appreciated that as a nod towards the idea that maybe non-crafters, non-fiber artists are watching the show. Top points for that. I thought Tom, the presenter, Tom Daly, gold medalist and knitter of the internet, I thought he was on fire in this episode. It was very saucy. He came up with some corkers that I personally really enjoyed. I'm sure they won't be for everyone, but I found it quite funny. The judges, I'm warming to Di a lot. Di, I think, when she cries because something is beautiful, I love that. It's a little bit like, is it Keith, the judge on the Great Pottery Throwdown? Again, something I watch without knowing anything about pottery making, although I've given it a tiny go, but I would like to explore that a little bit more because I really enjoy watching the show. And one of the judges on that show cries whenever there's something beautifully made. And Di seems to be going the same way. When there is something that is just beautifully knitted, she sheds a tear, and I really appreciate that. I really enjoy that. Sheila, I feel, is quite frosty. The looks, and I know it might be a lot in the editing, but some of the looks that she throws at the contestants when they say, oh yeah, I thought I would do this. It's funny. It makes for fun TV, but I feel bad for the person in front of her if they've caught that icy gaze. But, you know, again, the different personalities of the judges and the presenter all contributes for me to quite a fun hour of TV. Less than an hour because there's a lot of adverts on Channel 4, but you know what I mean. So the first challenge, the solo challenge, was to knit and crochet. So combine knitting and crochet in creating a coat, an outfit for an Iggy, an Italian greyhound, and a headpiece, some headgear. So it could be a hat, it could be a balaclava, as we saw. What a fantastic challenge. And I felt bad for the one contestant who clearly hates dogs. I think it's Lydia. It's okay, we could have been friends, never mind. I'm joking. Of course, it's fine, but how can you not? Those Iggy's were adorable. And I have a Dachshund myself, more on him later. But Iggy's are, Italian greyhounds are really cute, and they do constantly look cold. So I thought it was a very appropriate breed to choose to model some wool garments. They will be toasty and warm. It was great. I'm not sure about the headgear. I don't think my dog would enjoy that, But, you know, for the moment, for the challenge, it's fine. So the contestants had to make something to the measurements of these two beautiful puppies. And they were to be inspired by icons. Now, again, I feel much like the first challenge in the first episode, I feel like people took this quite loosely, the icons they chose. Some were very much made sense to me. Like, you know, there was Freddie Mercury, check. There was Ziggy Stardust, check. Now, the mascot of an ice hockey team, slightly less iconic, but I'm sure that to the locals, that would be iconic. The one that was my absolute favorite, which was Holger's creation, was inspired by the characters of Commedia dell'arte. Now, I was born in Italy, grew up in Italy, so that means a lot to me. I recognize what he's talking about. I absolutely saw it in the final creation. And I'm very, very familiar with all of that because I also studied drama. So that is something that you dive into a lot when you study theatre, because it's a very important tradition within the world of theatre. And it's very important to Italian culture, of course. So I was like, of course. But everyone else was like, tumbleweeds. And I'm not sure if you can call that necessarily iconic, but I loved what he created. I understood what he was coming from, so I'm absolutely accepting it as an icon. And I would say that the dog in the costume, I'm going to call it, that Holger created became an instant icon. That's how I'm reading it. Okay, so it's a big tick for me. I loved it. Also, it was pink, stripy. It had a lot to love. And I thought the headgear was probably the most successful. He did a sort of balaclava situation with a little crown on top. It fit. The fit was great on the dog. It didn't move around. It was fantastic. And I'm going to say it. I would wear that outfit. The jumper with the balloon sleeves, yes, please. That was fantastic. So cool. So I think that was my favorite, and clearly was everyone else's favorite in the room as well, because he got the best knitters badge. I really need to learn the actual name. All I remember about it is that it's a badge because it's in the shape of little sheep, which I adore. I really like this system of awarding best knitter of the week, basically. It's fantastic and he deserved it. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. The other one I quite enjoyed in terms of I would enjoy making it and wearing it was the unicorn that Dipti knit. But the hat situation wasn't quite staying on, so it's a shame. But it caught my eye, I'm going to say. And I was very intrigued by the yarns that she used. They were fun and fluffy and metallic. It was good. I also thought that the coat that Stephanie made, inspired by the Chelsea pensioners, was incredible. The texture on that, I thought it looked really, really, really good. So a nod to that one. So obviously that first challenge was fantastic, and I have knitted for my dog, and I will talk about that at the end in case you're interested. It is very fun because the projects do come together quite quickly, although it turns out for my latest project, it wasn't that quick because issues were encountered, but more on that later. First, let's talk about the second challenge, which is the team challenge. And the first episode, it was sort of a soft furnishing creation, which I didn't adore, I'm going to say. I thought they coped with it very well. They came up with great solutions, but I didn't look at it and think, oh, I want it, or oh, I want to knit that. Whereas this week's challenge was to create an 80s style jumper, an 80s inspired jumper knitted entirely out of mohair, but on very large needles. I love that because, again, then it grows quickly, but the yarn is really fine and fluffy and fluffy and exciting. And I was just really, really excited to see what was going to come out. And they worked as teams so that no one had to create a full jumper in 12 hours, I think it was. But everyone made the components and then they got sewn together, stitched together, and you had a full-ish jumper. No one actually managed to make 2 sleeves, I don't think, not 2 full sleeves. But, you know, I'm still impressed that there was a garment at the end of it. So on the note of 80s jumpers, I'm going to tell you what I'm wearing. I did not make this, sadly. This is a secondhand find in a vintage shop, but it is an 80s jumper, actual 80s jumper, because on the label it says it's from 1987, which I loved, by the way. I wish more clothes put the date on so that when you go charity shopping or thrifting, you can actually see when they're from. Easier for the people in the shop to price them as well, come to think of it. Anyway, this is an actual 80s jumper and I love it. I love the motifs of color work here, very geometric, very funky. And that's why I instantly thought that when Holger's theme started making their jumper, I thought, yes, that looks very 80s to me. They used the checkerboard, they used very pastel colors as well, which I thought was great. I loved that one from the start. As soon as the checkerboard started appearing, I was like, this is going to look good. Sadly, they couldn't make both sleeves, but they worked around it. They found a good solution, I thought, and the finished product was really cool. And of course, Wool and the Gang have already brought out a pattern for it. I thought, wow, that is a very well-oiled machine here happening. You don't get that on the Sewing Bee because it's on the BBC, but Channel 4 is like, boom, boom, boom. Get the products out. And I have been tempted. I did not buy it, but I was like, I can see myself wearing that jumper, and I would love to knit a fully mohair jumper. That is on my list. So watch this space. I might end up doing it. I'll see how many people start doing it. I don't want to look like everyone else, basically. So we'll see. To be determined. But I loved the design so much, and I thought the final product was fantastic. And I should have said that they were doing intarsia. I heard it said in both ways in the show, so I'm not sure which one's right. But the technique was that I have not tried that yet. I have done stranded color work, which I really enjoy, mainly eggs. But yes, they were using that technique and I thought it was pretty successful. But from what I saw, and this is without knowing much about the technique, it seems to be better suited to straight lines, which is why the checkerboard team, let's call it, had a much better looking color work result, I thought, compared to the other two teams that had curves involved in their design. So there was a guitar, like an electric guitar, and then some balloons. I really loved the balloon jumper as well. I thought that was really clever. They used some loose or like single strands of mohair to be the strings of the balloon. So there was a 3D effect. I thought that was so clever. And I quite appreciated the half balloon. Sorry, I've got a scared Roy here by my side. Wonder if we can show it. Where is he? Say hi. There he is. Oh, you're on camera. He doesn't love it. He hates alarms, basically, and there's been one going all day. There he goes again. Very annoying. London live. So anyway, the balloons was really, really fun, but the guitar one didn't go to plan, sadly, because of some mirroring was missed, basically, and there was meant to be some decreases on one side, and the person doing the front and the person doing the back did it on opposite sides. But the checkerboard, I think what happened is they only ended up doing one sleeve, but then on the other side they added a bow, which I really liked, and I really enjoyed watching the argument about embellishments. Hashtag embellishments. Tracy was all for it. Holger couldn't think of anything worse. I really enjoyed watching that. This is what I thought the team challenges would be like, because when you see them on shows like Project Runway or the like, there is bickering if you're lucky and fights if you're not. And just a little bit of conflict about embellishment is exactly the amount of seasoning that I needed for this week's episode of The Game of Wool. So I enjoyed it. Fighting over a bow, yes please. So that was the second challenge, and sadly the person that left had a bit of a moment on the guitar jumper. It was sad. I didn't like seeing that, but I thought Tom was quite sweet, kind of comforting her, and she's so young, like it's gonna be quite scary for her to be in there with much more experienced knitters. So I thought she did fantastic, and it was a shame to see her go because I liked her ideas and her choice of colors. In the first episode especially, there was a lot of pink, which I love. So all in all, I enjoyed this episode more than the first one. I feel like it went in a much more interesting direction for me, and the things that were being made on the show, I was like, I would like to make that, I would like to make that, I would like to wear that as well. So for me, that is a big part of watching this show. It's if there is anything that sparks up my imagination. On the Great British Sewing Bee, I like it when a challenge makes me go, oh, maybe I want to make a shirt like that or something like that. It's inspirational to someone who crafts. And I felt, for me, who I call myself an ambitious, adventurous beginner. I mean, I've done quite a few bits of knitting successfully. So yes, adventurous beginner feels quite right. But there's plenty that I haven't tried yet. And this show is making me go, oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do that. And on that note, although it wasn't inspired by the show, because I cast on this project on the morning of the first episode. So the Sunday morning of the first Sunday that the show went out. That was overly convoluted. So I'd cast it on, and then suddenly they talked on the show about the fact that week 2 was going to be knitting for dogs. I was delighted. So I have finished it. I have a finished object. I made a Christmas jumper for Roy. Roy is my dachshund. He is a standard sausage dog, not a mini one, which would be easier to make for. But I had this yarn, which I'll put a picture of on the screen, which Pat found in a charity shop, and it's sparkly and Christmassy, and I wasn't sure what I was going to make with it. And then I found the hot dog knitting pattern from Wool and the Gang, which required chunky yarn, which I don't usually knit with. And so the two things came together, and I thought, perfect, let's make Roy a festive jumper. The pattern is so easy. It came together so quickly. I was flying through it. I was very happy. I was adapting it as I went, because the 3 sizes in the pattern are for a miniature sausage dog, very different from mine, a pug sort of shape, and a medium dog like a spaniel. So I was adapting the spaniel one to try and fit the proportions, which are quite extreme proportions, of Roy. And I thought I was doing okay. In my head, the maths were mathing. And when I finished it, which was quite fast, it just looked huge on him. Bless him, it was too big. So what followed was a couple of days of absolute panic on my part of trying to fix this jumper. And I can happily report that I have, but I did spend a lot of time doing surgery basically on this jumper. But here it is. Ah! As you can see, it sparkles. And this is not the kind of yarn that I would personally wear, but I'm very happy for my dog to wear it because he looks adorable in it. So the pattern is dead easy if you have a dog that is sort of similar to the measurements and proportions of the dogs that it's designed for. I wouldn't recommend it if you have an oddly shaped dog. I think even for an Italian greyhound, you would have to change it up quite a lot. And yeah, it's not great. But the pattern itself is easy. So it's the fitting that's tricky. This one, I ended up making it way too big. So it was coming down. It's fun because you can kind of see the shape of my dog there. This is the neck. This is the tail. And there are leg holes underneath. Can you see them? Yeah, there they are. So let me see. There. I have to say, when I finished it, because it's knit, you knit it flat, I did try it on as a little gilet. And I thought, well, could work in different colors. It could work. But anyway, you knit it flat and then you seam it underneath basically. And I did that, and then it was huge. What I decided to do for a quick fix, and it did work, thank goodness, was to sew it, take it to the sewing machine instead of mattress stitching it, because I didn't know how to get rid of the excess fabric. I decided to take it to the sewing machine and use the overcast stitch, which is basically like an overlocker, but I couldn't fit this under my overlocker. It's too chunky. So it does a sort of securing overlocking stitch on your sewing machine. Most sewing machines have them. And I did that, cut the excess away, and nothing has unraveled. I'm pretty pleased. And if this was something for me, that wouldn't be good enough. But I think Roy doesn't mind how the seams look inside. So first I did that. I chopped off a big chunk in the center belly center belly seam. I don't know, what do you call it in a dog? It is the center front, I suppose. That's funny. So that's the first thing I did to make it smaller. Then it was still way too long. I'd added too much length. So I did some surgery. I cut, just reckless. It was hours of reckless knitting surgery. I cut and I picked up the live stitches and knit only for a small amount to add some length, but not as much length as was there already. And then I also did a stretchy bind off, which the pattern doesn't tell you to do, and I think you should do it. But obviously they're aiming it at very much at beginners, so maybe that's why they don't do that. But with Roy, at least, this bit, which is the smallest because it's his itty bitty waist, this circumference is going to be quite small, but it needs to get over his head, which is quite big, and his chest especially, which is very big in Roy's case. So when there was no stretchy bind off initially, I really struggled to get this part over the front part of my dog. So this time when I reknit the end of it, I did a stretchy bind off, which is actually pretty easy. Some of them are. It does curl up, but I think that's kind of cute. I don't mind that. Again, it's for the dog. It's fine. I mean, he deserves the best, but he's not picky in that sense. So yes, I restitched the center front. I cut some length and finished it off with a stretchy bind off. And then the armholes were too big as well. So I went back. He was kind of swimming in it. I went back and knit some extra rows, I think 4 extra rows to kind of close in that gap, and it does fit better now. However, I think it's still a little bit big because he has managed to get out of the jumper, what he does, and he does it with another jumper that I've knitted for him. He somehow, because the fabric is stretchy, he manages to get his front paws out of the holes, and then he wears it as a skirt, which is a look. And maybe it's him telling me to just make him skirts, which would be way easier because it's just a tube. Anyway, it's finished, and I will put some pictures up. They're not the best pictures, but you can see the fit. And he looks adorable in it, and it's very squishy and warm. And I think he's not as bad as an Italian greyhound, but Roy does get cold, and all he wants to do is snuggle. And if I'm working, I work from home. If I'm working, I'm not available at all times to snuggle him. So I feel like this can be the replacement for my snuggles when I am not available, and that is quite adorable. So there we go. My chunky knit, sort of kind of inspired by the Game of Wool. Why not? Pretty happy with that. So that's it for this week. Will I do one next week? I don't think so, but never say never. There might be something in the show that I'm like, I have to talk about that. We'll see. But I will definitely be back on Friday with my usual vlogs. I do at least one vlog a week. Every now and then there's an extra, like these Game of Wool videos. But I would love it if you came back, if you've just found me by accident. I would love for you to subscribe to the channel and check out my other vlogs. I talk a lot about sewing, a lot about knitting, and a few extra things. I've got a very fun vlog about a fashion exhibition, the Marie Antoinette style exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. So that's a little bit different if you want to check out what kind of content I do on this channel. But if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed. I am kind of approaching 2,000 subscribers, which to me is huge. I started this channel this year, and I honestly didn't know if anyone was going to watch anything I ever did. So that to me seems like a huge milestone. If I get to it before the end of the year, that would be really nice. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do consider doing so. And if you enjoy my content and my videos, do give them all a like, comment. I love reading your comments. And if you're able to, consider buying me a coffee. The link is below. And yes, come back on Friday when I will have another vlog up. It will be mostly sewing. Maybe there's a little bit of knitting progress coming up. We'll see, because I kind of zeroed in on the dog jumper. I really wanted to finish it, so everything else has been put on hold. So maybe this week I'll manage to pick up one of my other whips. That would be nice. But yes, see you again soon. And until then, keep making and keep chatting about making. Bye. Hashtag embellishments. Hashtag embellishments.